Nice Radio, 90.3, 101.3, 96.7 FM.
Nice Radio Callaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Remember, you can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 6th day of April 2019. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. You know, dear friends, the judgment in respect of the petitions case has come and gone. And happily, before the judgment was delivered, Just Another Look had spent quite a bit of time highlighting the fact that at the end of the day, we really were not interested in the judgment. Because what we had heard in the courts from our distinguished people who were selected somehow to play a role in the administration of our electoral system was enough to make you totally ashamed. But the good spin doctor that we have leading this country appears to want to suggest that the whole issue of the petitions case may well have painted St. Vincent and the Grenadines in a light that perhaps he did not particularly like. We have said on this program time and time again that when it suits the pride and purposes of the ruling regime, comments, criticisms, activities, events are characterized as painting our country in a bad light. And we ask our dear spin doctor, a bad light for whom? A bad light for whom? Is it that people in this country must no longer be able to speak their minds about the truth? Because it seems to us that the truth that the Unity Labour Party wishes to deliver to the world is not necessarily our truth. There seemed to be a lack of clarity on the part of the leadership of the Unity Labour Party in respect of what is truth and what is designed. And when Maharaj Jagdeo was speaking at the opening about a right way and a wrong way to do things, clearly they weren't ashamed. Maybe then they felt vindicated. It wasn't an embarrassment for them that children trying to get to their CXCs were hampered by the roadblocks in some instances. It didn't appear to them any embarrassment that some people were trying to get to their work, others to the airport to catch their flights, and they were hampered by the roadblocks. That did not matter. It did not paint us in a bad light internationally because they were the ones responsible for what was happening. It did not paint us in a bad light. But if you tell the truth at home, in the media, about the state of the Vincentian economy, then it's painting us in a bad light. It does not paint us in a bad light that for the several years in office we have seen several new national records established for the number of murders committed in a single year. That does not faze them. It does not paint us in a bad light in the international community. But challenging the results of an election, of course. Of course. But they forgot that they were once on the other side, challenging results. You see, it doesn't matter what quality of degree you have. It doesn't matter what letters you have before or after your name. Magnanimity of an individual has to do with self-pride. It has to do with integrity. It has to do with high moral and ethical standards. And some of them don't know anything about those. They would rather tell you about the new morality where there is in fact the absence of any morality whatsoever. So it's fine for some to get up and pontificate about what makes St. Vincent and the Grenadines look bad in the international community and what makes us look good. But again, we insist. The Vincentian electorate knows and understands what happened in the last general elections. Some understand only too well what happened in the previous general elections. And it is clear in some people's minds that those who dare to suggest that our elections are free and fair may be willing to suggest that it is not free from fair, F-E-A-R. The undue haste by some to be sworn in in a dicey situation is remarkable and tells an awesome story. It tells an awesome story. But let's ignore that, because if you talk about that, then it will paint us in a bad light in the international community. After all, we're always in the international community begging for something. And maybe when people see or hear of the truth, the real truth and nothing but the truth, it would paint us in a bad light. and we may not be able to get anything when we beg. We have a foreign policy based on mendicancy, and that has not changed. And you follow the fortunes of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and what passes for leadership, and you understand that perhaps at the end of the day, the party took to heart the proclamation by one of its members. We should not just own the party. We should not just own the campaign. We should own the jobs too. Let's make the country ours and forget about everybody else. That's what you did with the international airport. Because only one grouping could have gotten it for political rallies while it was under construction. Only one grouping could have gotten that. And it is an understanding of that by the minions of the party that allowed them to dare to embed in concrete the symbol of that political party for the opening of the Argyle International Airport. The intention may well have been to leave it there for all time. But for once, there was some sense of shame that led to its deconstruction. Because finally, the minions came to an understanding. It was ours, not theirs. It was ours, not the nation's. It belongs to the party, just like everything else in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have reached a culture where some people have changed their entire wardrobes. It's only red they can use. Because they recognize that they have come to an understanding that the dynamics of life in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is based on your political coloration. You have good fortune if you belong to the ruling regime. And God bless you if you're not in that grouping, you're in trouble. You have to leave yourself in God's hands because there's nobody else going to be anxious to help you. That is what we have become as a society. And we dare to suggest to the world that there was something about petitioning the outcome of an election that should make us look bad in the international community. What looks bad in the international community is what was recorded in the courts by some of the people who were responsible for the administration of our general election. That should make you feel ashamed. That should make us all feel ashamed. That these are the people we put in charge of the process, who couldn't remember, who didn't know what to do. And some who clearly made things disappear. Because if somebody says, I put the 2 forms in an envelope and put it in the box, yet when they opened the box, none was there. Well, it disappeared, didn't it? And you're not ashamed about that. If you could have somebody there to suggest, well, at the time of closing, I just carried home for safekeeping. That should make you ashamed. That should make you ashamed. But it doesn't. Because shame is not something that comes easily to certain people. Perhaps sometimes in swiveling in the big chair, the giddiness creates a problem for the intellect. And so we have to understand why some things are being said. You know, and some people are just losing it. I suppose it comes with age. But you know, friends, we want to tell you about the visit of Prince Charles and his wife. Prince Charles and his wife. You know, since the announcement that Prince Charles of the United Kingdom and his wife Camilla would be visiting some Caribbean islands, there was a flurry of activities like you don't normally see. People were anxious to do all sorts of things for the royal visit. Things that they don't do for themselves normally. They do it for the royal it's the royal family that's coming. The royal family is coming. And just another look says, without fear of contradiction, one could understand Barbados. One could understand that happening in a country like Barbados. Because Barbados has always been considered Little England. And so it was easy for us to understand the flurry of activities, how the people of that country busy themselves with preparation. Because, as it so often appears, Barbados has been easily the most loyal to the British Crown since conquest and colonization. Of all Caribbean countries, Barbados has been the single most loyal country to the British Crown. You may recall, that during the period of the interregnum in the 17th century, when Oliver Cromwell and the boys were on the throne, were taking charge of the British government, and the king was exiled, the Planters' Assembly in Barbados continued to pledge loyalty to the crown in exile. That's how loyal they were and have remained to the British crown. So we could understand Barbados and Barbadians behaving the way in which they did. The late Tim Hector of Antigua and Barbuda, God rest his soul, often described Barbados as the best organized black nation in the world. What he did not say was that this may well have been the result of the systematic and perhaps systemic imposition of uninterrupted colonial rule over the people of Barbados. The Barbados Planters' Assembly, since its formation, continued its existence uninterrupted until independence in 1966. Until its independence in November of 1966. Amazing, isn't it? It is indeed Little England. So, Barbados' extensive loyalty to the crown may well have been little more than a reflection of the stranglehold of the planter class in that country during slavery. And so the planter class of Barbados maintained its assembly without any sort of interruption through to 1996, when the country became independent. No other Caribbean country, none, could boast of such immense luxury and loyalty to a colonizing and exploitative power. It is not at all surprising, therefore, that Barbados and Barbadians are almost always the recipients of visits from the royal family. The latter see it as coming home and renewing long-standing acquaintances. Amazing, isn't it? A royal visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, however, is another matter. It is another matter. You know, we seem to have forgotten that even though historical accuracy would suggest that Châteauguay would never really have entertained a British soldier in a sword fight. That seems to defy historical accuracy. Yes, we can understand the business of surprise attacks on the British. But a sword fight? Not likely. But for whatever it's worth, the most important part is that Châteauguay led the local forces, the Kalinago and Garifuna, in resistance to Major Leith and his army that came with the Abercrombie crowd. So that our national hero died at the hands of the British, who were intent on wresting St. Vincent and the Grenadines from the Spanish since they left it unoccupied, really. So we're observing our national hero and celebrating in the very same month the representative of the colonizing power that took his life. Tragic irony, isn't it? That we chose that month, National Heroes Month, to welcome the representative of the British Crown, the symbol of the regime that ended the life of our national hero. The representative of the same institution whose forces corralled the rest of the Garifuna, took them to Baliso and then exiled them to the island of Roatan of what is today Honduras. We know that many of them have since gone to Guatemala and others to Danriga in Belize, where they have maintained their culture, while we have, unfortunately, destroyed ours. And now we appear to be anxious to try to bring it back. But in the midst of all of that, we found time to wine and dine the representative of the British monarchy. You know, Blondibird, Blondibird is a walking historian, just like Dougie Knows Joseph. They are two of our notable walking historians, as was Doc Adams, who died recently. But Blondibird, for his part, would have just another look as Parnell Campbell about the numerous activities and incidents in which some Vincentian youths at the time engaged in preparation for the visit of then Princess Margaret several years ago. And there's a reason that Blondibird would want us to ask Parnell in particular. And Patches Knight may also want to have asked Parnell Campbell the same sort of question. Tell the nation about the activities in which a number of our youths were engaged relative to the visit of Princess Margaret, and your role in it. You see, Blondie Bird, Patches Knight, the late Caspar London, could never forget how many hours they spent making placards for the occasion, in the belief that somehow it was an excellent opportunity to show Vincentian radicalism. It was an excellent opportunity to show its rejection of British royalty and the ascendancy of black power. It is left for Blondie Bird and Patches Knight, now that Caspar is dead, to explain what transpired in their own words. And an assumption that at least one protagonist was not among those chased by the nation's security forces. Some were just too busy, standing, smiling, eating, drinking in high places. Patches Knight left his shirt in an officer's hand as he was being chased. Caspar London may well have received the brunt of the police's response to the daring protestation of some Vincentian youth. But perhaps one of these days, we may be able to encourage Pierre Campbell to tell us about this part of our history. Prince Charles's visit must have made him delightfully pleased with Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. He must have been particularly pleased to have met Ralph Gonsalves face to face, to shake his hand and perhaps even embrace him. It must have been particularly pleasing. After all, Gonsalves at once proclaims the call for reparation while appearing to pander to their majesties with the latter's awards. It is a sense of tragic irony. It's something of a tragi-comedy that someone of Gonsalves' ilk would dare to suggest that he's in a position to participate in a process that seeks reparation for the experience of slavery. That he, of all people, could be a protagonist for reparation for our peoples and the experiences that we had. And yet, in his capacity as Prime Minister, having met in place virtually all that needed to be done relative to the replacement of Her Majesty's awards with our own local awards, symbolic of our independence. That for 18 plus years, he would prefer to dispense Her Majesty's awards to Vincentians, rather than put in place the financial resources to implement what was left to be implemented of the program for national awards. The real tragedy, the real tragicomedy was that this gentleman would have been so welcoming to Prince Charles and his wife. Welcome to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We love you so much that we continue to give the royal families awards on an annual basis to our Vincentians, whom we want to tell you are independent. They are independent. The descendants of Châteauguay are proud recipients of your awards. They are proud recipients of your awards. Because after 39 years of independence and 18 years under my leadership, we are still giving them your awards. That is how much we love you. That is how much we love you. That is how we are grateful for the experience of colonialism. So much so that we find it extremely difficult to give up your awards. What an amazing thing, isn't it? Because that has to be the message. And we don't feel ashamed. We don't consider how that makes us look in the eyes of the international community. Or is it that we are all hoping that we will convince them that what we're doing is engaging in a sort of political dematrickery with the royal family, so that we will continue to be the recipient of some sort of largesse. And perhaps maybe they will like us enough that they will pat us on our heads as they've done ever since conquest, gradually releasing some of the funds we so badly claim to need for reparation. You see, it is extremely difficult for some people who consider themselves progressive to understand that kind of political gamesmanship. And many have simply swept it aside and says, look, it is utter political trite, utter political garbage. In a word, it is essentially political opportunism, nothing more. You see, Charles, like the rest of the British royal family, must be enthused that despite all of the political rhetoric that has characterized Gonzales for all of his political life, he continues to shower the monarchy's awards on Vincentians. Charles must have left, or must have felt at home, meeting the Sirs, the MBEs, and the OBEs right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Even as the Prime Minister, speaking from one side of his mouth, occasionally seems to be appealing for reparation. One gets the impression, though, that reparation, from our vantage point, may mean more about collecting some money, not an addressing of the crimes that were committed against black people in particular from across the seas. Charles must have readily understood that Gonzales and his Unity Labour Party have no genuine commitment to instituting national honors any time soon. They're quite happy to continue to show a certain loyalty to Her Majesty or His Majesty going forward. Indeed, it appears that Gonzales himself may well be gratified were he to be the recipient of one of Her Majesty's distinguished honors. It would probably be for him the icing on his political cake. It must have been perceived as sheer political irony, if not tragicomedy, that given Gonzales's color, he was playing the role of appearing to be so overly concerned about the plight of the slaves, largely black, that he is an advocate of reparation. Astute political analysts would probably understand that should reparations be made anytime soon, the major beneficiaries would certainly not be the descendants of slaves who suffered great ignominy, but rather those who continue to use their wealth to fund politicians and their campaigns, largely to later wield control over the political and other processes of governance. Charles must have been enthused that he found a willing and pliant ally in Gonzales. Despite all of his political rhetoric, there seems little by way of concrete evidence that Gonzales possesses any genuine commitment to independence. His foreign policy seems to suggest a high-order commitment to mendicancy, and hence pronounced admiration and adoration for those leaders who appear willing to offer him assistance. This is nowhere more evident than in the case of his near reverence for Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. Venezuela's super generous Petrocaribe appears to have been conceived as a parody of Simon Bolivar's design for the Americas, oblivious to the changing dynamics of contemporary politics. The creation of ALBA appears nothing more than a half-baked attempt at creating a regional version of our own ill-fated odd thing. There was never going to be any new creation of the order envisaged. The attraction of the ALBA to those who readily committed themselves and their nations was the saving grace of the monies that Venezuela were willing, the oil and the monies that Venezuela were willing to shell out. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Venezuela's debt forgiveness cements our commitment to that South American country, regardless of what transpires there. Gonzales's near obeisant approach to the royal couple threatens to give the lie to the claim that had he been invited to join his Caribbean colleagues at Trump's meeting, he would have declined. Yeah, right. The historical antecedents of Gonzales's politics would instead seem to suggest that he would have gone. More than this, he would probably have done much like Trump himself did in Europe, shift everyone else aside to make certain that he was nearest to him when the photo shoot was being undertaken. But you're listening to Just Another Look. You hear it only on Nice Radio. Well, friends, ULP celebrates 19 years of the so-called roadblock revolution. Don't matter what they told you, don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. On Thursday, the 4th of April 2019, the ruling Unity Labour Party did what it does best. Gathered its minions to create a remembrance of the roadblocks of 2000. We know, yes, they said it was a celebration of 18 years in office. It's not that. Trust me, it was not that. They could say that till their face turned blue. The reality is that it was an observance of the 19th anniversary. The 19th anniversary of the roadblock. You remember, it's April, May 2000 that we had more roadblocks that John could talk about. More roadblocks that John could talk about. And so it was to come and march around Kingston. Take control of the city because it is yours. Take control of the city because it is yours. Right? Remember, we did that in 2000. April, May 2000. We blocked up the road. We took charge of everything. 19 years ago. So don't let anybody fool you. We trumpeting of 18 years of this and 18 years of that. It is 19 years of the roadblock that you need to remember that they were observing. They could say anything. But if you know your history, you know that it is 19 years ago that they had the so-called roadblock revolution. You see, they said that you should come and join them to celebrate the 18 years in office. 18 years of Labour now under the same man who on the night of the election in 2001 says it's no longer Labour now, it is Together now. But on the 4th of April 2019, you could not get anybody in the grouping to even mention Together now. It was a display that essentially showed the nation just how divided we have become in the last 18 years. So you have 19 years of roadblock revolution. 19 years of roadblock revolution. And 18 years of the so-called education revolution, the benefits of which were manifested in what we heard in the court during the petitions. That is the outcome of the education revolution. I can't remember. I was busy. Mistakes can be made. I put something in a box, it and then when I open it. I can't recall off the top of my head if I received any forms from North Windward. That's the outcome of the education revolution that has been 18 years in existence. And that's why we say to you, it was more of a celebration of 19 years of roadblock, of the roadblock revolution, according to their concept of revolution. You see, to the uninitiated, the ULP appeared to have been observing its 2001 victory. But to those who know and understand our political history, what they saw was really a reflection, a rejoicing, and a celebration of 19 years of the roadblock revolution. You see, Vincentians, who are ever mindful of the nation's history, would have immediately seen through the facade that was being fed to the ULP minions by its moribund and decadent leadership. It was in April 2000, April and May of 2000, that Vincentians saw the grasp for political power